Welcome back to the Barrel Talk Podcast. We are back with another episode of Let's Talk About It. We are going to be continuing our series of doing a deep dive into every single NBA team before this upcoming season. This episode, we are going to be focusing on the Orlando Magic. Now, before we get into the episode, make sure to leave a like on the video. It helps the channel out a ton. And make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on future NBA content and NFL content on the podcast. But we can start talking about the Orlando Magic, a team that had a very, very good year, making the playoffs, losing to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the Game 7, which they probably should have won. And they probably would have made a better series out of the Boston Celtics in the second round, but a little sour end losing in Game 7 when they were up 20 in that game. Donovan Mitchell went crazy towards the back half of that game to pull that one out for Cleveland, but I do think this is still a very successful year for the Orlando Magic, who is still a very, very young team. I think they had a very positive offseason. When you look at the issues that they did have, it was spacing. This team, we know they can guard. We know they're going to sit down. They're one of the best defensive teams in the league. They have the size. They have the interior defense. They have the perimeter defense. Now they need to add the spacing. This is also going to come with development from their guys. They're a very, very young team. You expect Powell to become a better shooter with time. Jalen Suggs is to become a better shooter with time now that he's kind of found his niche and his role in the NBA. You expect Franz Wagner's shot to come back around, who kind of had a down year from 3 last year. But looking at this team, the offseason moves, Tristan da Silva in the draft, he's going to be a play right away kind of guy in that rotation. It has kind of a 3 or 4, and even I feel like sometimes when you do a lot of small ball lineups with Paulo at the 5, I think he's the perfect guy to have at that 4 spot. He can do a little bit of everything. He is somebody that is, like I said, ready to play right now in the NBA. He is somebody that can be a plus shooter for them right away, and he's going to still be able to sit down and guard. He's 6'9", 6'8"-ish, so I think he's going to be very, very good for them right away. And then they signed KCP. That was the kind of big splash move that they made this offseason, which I think is going to help them a ton. The only thing I don't really know about this move is this kind of negates what you got from Jalen Suggs last year, and now you're kind of in a position to where, are you moving Jalen Suggs back to the 1? Or are you bringing Jalen Suggs off the bench? Because you didn't pay KCP all that money to bring him off the bench. So I'm interested to see where they go with this line because you don't have Markelle Fultz. I think Cole Anthony is in the perfect role being a six-man spark guy off the bench. And I feel like Anthony Black is somebody who may needs a little bit more reps before you want to throw him in there as your starting point guard, but he has the size and he gives you everything you want out of the point guard position. But I'm going to be interested to see, at least at the start of the year, I know they're going to end up figuring it out at some point during the year, but I'm interested to see what it looks like. Do we get more Paolo Banchero being more of a point forward, and they have a lineup of what I think is going to be to start the year. Jalen Suggs at year 1, KCP at year 2, giving you a really, really one of the best defensive backcourts in the league, underrated for sure. Franz Wagner at the 3, Paolo at the 4, Wendell Carter at the 5. And then off your bench you have Cole Anthony, Anthony Black, Tristan da Silva, Mo Wagner, Jonathan Isaac still. You have a very deep team of all guys that can really sit down, guard, switch a bunch of different positions, but it really comes back to, is that spacing going to come through? That kind of gives me into my X factor before we get into that. It's like, it's going to be interesting to see if Paulo makes that kind of point forward jump, and with a lineup like I just said, they're going to need him to kind of be that initiator from a playmaking perspective. I think Jalen Suggs is a perfect 3-and-D guard, but I kind of feel like we've seen how it looks with him as a point guard. Obviously, he has developed a ton, so he could go back to kind of being more of a point guard role, but also being that great defender that he is and that we've shown him to be last year. But it's going to be interesting to see kind of the lineups they can do. They're one of the more versatile teams in the league for sure with the talent that they do have on the backside of that bench. But looking at it, I think Paolo Banchero could be more into a point forward role this year, with him kind of running the show, more of kind of like a Bron, if you will, with him being more so of the lead initiator at times. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see which direction this Orlando Magic team goes, because they do have a young, promising guard in Anthony Black off that bench, but with them making the playoffs, I feel like there's going to be times where like they want to go with their guys that they're more ready with right now. But who knows? Anthony Black can come out onto the scene and be the starting point guard for this year and be great for this team. I could be proven wrong, but as of right now, I think the starting 5 is going to be Jalen Suggs, KCP, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, and Wendell Carter. I think we see more point Paolo this year. X factor, I think, is Franz Wagner for sure, because when you look at last year, I feel like his shot kind of took a step back. When you thought it was going to be more and more consistent, I think it was just a down year. I do think he's going to rebound and bounce back off that bad shooting season because they desperately need him to. I know you add KCP, Jalen Suggs' shot is coming around. He's more consistent from 3. You add KCP, but if you can get Franz Wagner to also be a little bit more from somewhere between 35 to 40% from three, then you're really talking and really solving a lot of those spacing problems, because you have Wendell Carter who can space the floor. You have Paolo Banchero, who I assume is just going to continue to develop that jump shot of his. But when you have the spacing next to somebody like Paolo Banchero, I feel like that's when you're going to see the best of him, when he has more lanes to get to the basket. And I feel like the spacing with this team, the main problem that was with this team last year was the spacing. I think this year, if you can get a bounce back season from Franz Wagner shooting wise, and you can get the other guys to step up as well, I feel like this team is going to be in a very, very good spot and direction going forward. In terms of expectations, I think this team is going to be probably, I'll start this off differently. I want to say this team, I think this could be throughout the year, a top 10 team in the league. I think this is how good the Orlando Magic could be, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think they have top 5 to 6 just depth in general in the entire NBA. I feel like they're a deep team that can sit down and guard, switch multiple positions. The only thing that I think they're lacking is that spacing. So if they can get that spacing under control, I think you're going to see a big time jump from Paolo Banchero this upcoming year, especially in numbers-wise. I feel like just because the numbers didn't take a drastic uptick from Paolo's rookie year to his second year, I think they could take a jump this year, because I feel like they have the better pieces, and just the development of other guys on the team, spacing-wise, can make the job easier on Paolo. But I expect this team to really be a threat in the Eastern Conference. I think they match up with a lot of different teams better than people think, because of the way they can sit down and guard. Like I said last year, I think if they beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, I definitely think they get a game or two off Boston, because they can sit down and guard. They can do something Cleveland couldn't do, is stop the Boston Celtics. I'm not saying Orlando Magic is out here going to just stop the Boston Celtics, because that's easier said than done. But personnel-wise, I think they match up better with a team like the Knicks, with a team like the Boston Celtics, with a team like Milwaukee, because they have the length and the size to guard. I put them in the same tier. I talked about this in the Cleveland Cavaliers video. They're kind of in that tier below still. I think they're in the same tier as Cleveland, Indiana. I can kind of see maybe Atlanta being in that mix as well this year. They're kind of in that tier below the upper echelon teams in the Eastern Conference, but I think Orlando kind of has the best shot out of those teams because of the way that they can guard and the personnel they do have to really compete with those teams in the upper echelon. They're a dangerous, sneaky team that I feel like if you said to the top echelon teams in the league in the first round, would you rather play any of the tier 2 teams that I just named, I think they would least likely want to play the Orlando Magic this upcoming year in the playoffs, because of the personnel they do have and how they are coached to be more defensive minded. But the spacing, if that does come around, this Orlando Magic team is going to be very, very dangerous. And I'm excited to see what comes out of Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, see what Anthony Black can provide for them in this year too. But I'm interested to see. I think this is going to be one of the more sneaky good teams in the NBA throughout the course of the season. I think they can low-key be like competing for like the top of the Eastern Conference. I think this can be a very, very good regular season team with the depth that they do have. But that's all I have for this episode of breaking down the Orlando Magic. Thank you guys for tuning into the Barrel Talk podcast. Hope you tune in to future episodes.